You know that when Anne was 5 years old, she got polio. Her parents took her to the St. Mark's Hospital in Salt Lake. They wouldn't admit her because the people thought it was so contagious. They put her in a hearse and took her to Salt Lake Hospital. They wouldn't let her in the front door because of contagion, fear of it. Her father carried her up the fire escape to the room of isolation. She was there for 2 months. I will be reading from various things that Anne has written and that I have written. When I was 5 years old, Anne writes, I got polio. I couldn't speak. She was paralyzed. I couldn't speak, sit up, hold up my head, or swallow. My father wasn't active, but my mother had great faith. So she prayed fervently for the 2 months I was in the hospital, that the Lord would make me better, but I was getting worse. It wasn't until she finally decided that she would accept whatever the Lord had in mind, my getting well, my being crippled for life, or my death. After that, I started getting better. Soon I was well enough to go home, but was still disabled. I was fed through a feeding tube and had been fitted for a back and neck brace that I would wear the rest of my life. And I still could not speak. She could just mumble. I had not been administered to in the hospital because I was in isolation. So right after I got home, the elders came and administered to me. After they left, my mother went into the kitchen to fix lunch. While she was there, she heard me say, Look, Mother, I can sit up. She couldn't believe her ears and ran in to see that I could speak, I could hold up my head, I could swallow, and I could sit up. I was healed. When Anne was in Davis High School, she was never considered one of the popular girls, but she was quiet and modest, and the other students liked her. She was elected by vote, Harvest Queen and Senior Prom Mistress. Courtship, quoting Anne. I was impressed with Farrell. Oh. Did I get that right? He was a senior in college and teaching college math classes. He had been accepted by one of the best schools, Caltech, to get his PhD. He was a good, strong member of the church and had the most infectious laugh, she writes. He asked me out, and we had a wonderful time. I think that the reason it was easy for me to be with him at that time was that I heard that he liked another girl. So I was pretty sure I didn't have a chance with him. If I had tried to impress him, that would have been a different matter. Then he asked me out again, and I knew I had a chance with him. In trying to impress him, I almost completely clammed up. I don't think I couldn't think of a thing to say. I don't think I said more than a dozen words. I was sure I didn't impress him and that he wouldn't ask me out again. I came home and cried my heart out to my sister Joan. But he did ask me out again. I was overjoyed. When riding in his car, he kept running out of gas. That's right. But he always coasted to a gas station. And then he ran over his briefcase at the U of U. What manner of man was I falling in love with? It was on our 5th date that we went to the observatory at the University of Utah where we could look at the stars. He had a key. It was the ultimate romantic setting. It was there that he kissed me for the first time. I had actually been waiting for some time. On one date, when we went to my house, we made a kite out of a newspaper and some sticks. I had serious doubts that one made out of newspaper, but I didn't doubt for long. The wind was perfect, and the kite flew higher than I'd ever seen one fly. It was a wonder to behold. And what impressed me was Anne. She was jumping up and down and squealing with delight and clapping her hands watching that kite. Was I ever falling in love with her? Farrell loved hearing me play the piano, and I loved playing for him. He thought I played more beautifully than anyone he had ever heard. You may remember, many of you here, that at age 70, she held a piano recital for the family. It was amazing and beautiful. Now, hard times. The hard time I caused Anne. I grew up surrounded by criticism, sharp judgments, put-downs were daily fare. I knew the failings of everyone in Logan. It was dinner table conversation. Add to that the fact that my mother and sister were excellent cooks and excellent housekeepers, and Anne was an okay cook and an indifferent housekeeper. Lynn takes issue with this.
She didn't have enough time. She wasn't indifferent. She cared.
Though I was fervently in love with Anne, I wanted her to be perfect. So I corrected her when she came up short. Anne writes, this is Anne now. He thought that it would be easy for me to change. I tried, but could never quite make it. This was frustrating to Farrell. The pleasant reminders changed to nagging criticism. I wasn't used to it. I was scared to have him look in the fridge or look in his drawer for clean socks. I worried that he would be mad at me. She was becoming afraid of Farrell. The criticism was not constant, but despite the good times, the criticism hovered over our marriage. It was a quiet, constant source of pain to me, Anne. Then, one night, when we went to bed, Farrell sternly brought up the problem of the refrigerator or some housekeeping thing. I simply withdrew. For the first time, Farrell came to the realization what he was doing to me. This is my writing. Anne clasped her hands around her arms around her knees and shut down. I tried to reach her. Anne, Anne. She couldn't reply. At that moment, I realized what I was doing to Anne. I was destroying Anne's vibrant personality. If I continued, Anne would lose all the wonderful traits that I so dearly loved. Perhaps most women would simply say, "Come on, Farrell, stop it." Anne couldn't do that. The next morning, I begged her forgiveness. And now, quoting from Anne, he vowed that he would change, that his days of trying to improve me had come to an end. I said that morning, "Never again in life will I criticize you for anything, not for anything." Continue with Anne's words. Farrell did change. The change has been complete. Some 40-odd years have passed since that incident when she wrote this. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, in his attitude toward me that remotely resembles what it was. He wanted to make me into someone who was practically perfect in every way. But now, instead of trying to mold me into someone I am not, he accepts my many imperfections and loves me completely for the person I am. And I, in turn, love him completely for the person he is. On my last birthday, before her death, Anne wrote this message to me. Her health had, as you all know, deteriorated terribly. You are the source of my greatest joy, Farrell, and you bring it in so many ways. You take care of me. You vacuum, do the dishes, make meals, water the plants, mop the floor, take care of the yard, and dress me when I'm in pain. Make the bed, tuck me in bed, make sure I get the best doctor care, the best food, the best sleep, and the best love any wife could get. What would my life have been without you? How could I have been so blessed to find you and have you for over 60 years? I do love you, Farrell. I love you with all my heart and soul. Happy birthday, my dearest love, Anne. Looking back, I am simply grateful that I was able to overcome such a fundamental flaw in my character. On the other hand, how does one make up for so many nagging hurts that brought my wife to tears? I still agonize over the pain I caused that beautiful, wonderful girl in those bygone days. Now, Anne's causing Farrell pain. Quite a different way. As a child, Anne's dream was to marry in the temple and have children. Oh, incidentally, you see all these pages, but the print is so huge so I can read it, and I've got it timed. I will be done in 45 minutes from the beginning. Music has always been an important part of Anne's life. She had over 6 piano teachers, including Reed Nibley at BYU and Frederick Dixon in Salt Lake, who himself took lessons from a student of Chopin. Dixon was sought after as a teacher. Anne writes, I played in many music recitals. One recital that was especially fun was when I played the first movement of Grieg's Piano Concerto with Frederick Dixon playing the orchestra part. Anne's talent, I'm now continuing, was remarkable. Her interpretations were haunting. She was a prodigy. When we moved to Logan, Anne thought that she would take lessons. Irving Wasserman, one of the finest piano teachers in Utah, accepted her as a student. I encouraged her, and she became enamored with the piano. She practiced several hours every day. But I worried. Wasserman was a genius of flattery and praise. He told Anne that she had great talent. He told her that if she'd take a couple of music classes and get a master's degree, he would hire her as a professor of music at the university. Anne was thrilled. Professor Anne Parrish Edwards. This became her goal. Unfortunately, this came in conflict with her childhood dream of family and children. I was jealous. I was losing Anne. I no longer wanted to listen to her play a new piece which she was learning. She was disappointed in me, and we began to drift apart. This new goal was taking over. This went on for several months. I suffered for me and for the children. And continuing, I was loving being completely involved in music, and I was carried away by the attention given to me by this well-known musician. But the possibilities of a career in music, carried away also by the possibilities of a career in music and the beauty of the music itself. After a few months of this, the lure of the music and the recognition faded. I realized that my husband and family were beginning to take a back seat to some kind of life that I was neither suited for nor that I would be content with. What I really wanted was my dream back. To be a good wife and mother. I just wanted the time to sit on the piano bench with a little child of mine and listen to him play the piano. Or read a story to my little girl. Or listen to my 6-year-old tell about his day at school. And I was feeling so guilty and sad about being taken up with something that was so far from enhancing a quality family life. Quite suddenly, the practicing, the lessons, the music classes, the flattery, the praise, the thought of being a professor of music no longer mattered to me anymore. I dropped my classes, quit my lessons, and turned my attention once again to my husband and children. And I didn't experience a single moment of regret. I simply felt relief to be done with it all. However, I did and still do feel remorse for the pain I caused Farrell. Before this extended experience, Ann and I had 4 children: Boyd, Lynn, David, and Alan. You were the end. I had told her that this was enough. Where are you, Marianne? You wouldn't have been there. This was enough. That we shouldn't have any more. But now, Ann was back with her dream. Is it any wonder that we ended up with 10 children? An unusual trip to the Wind Rivers. My planning for this hike in the Wind River Mountains began as usual. The children under 12 would stay home with Ann. We planned to start hiking at Worthen Meadows, 10 miles on a scary dirt road from Lander, Wyoming. Arriving at Worthen Meadows the late afternoon, we set up camp expecting to begin hiking the next morning, planning to have a nice hot dinner that evening. I had splurged, buying some small steaks. Rats, I couldn't find them. I had left them in the refrigerator at home. Oh well, we could get along without them. We had plenty of food. After dinner, I was fussing with the packs when who should come down, driving down that dirt road? Ann. After we left home, Ann noticed that I'd forgotten the little package of meat in the refrigerator. So what to do? She knew we were headed for Worthen Meadows, not far from Lander. She had no idea how to get there. She knew that on the next morning, we would be on the trail. There were no cell phones, so she couldn't call. Quickly, Ann arranged for a babysitter to care for the little children overnight. Then she found someone who knew how to get to Lander. And away she went, alone in the car. At Lander, 5 hours later, she asked someone how she could find the dirt road to Worthen Meadows. Was there any question in Ann's mind whether or not she should drive 5 hours there and 5 hours back to give us that little package of meat? None at all. That was simply Ann. 2003, a note in my once-in-a-while journal. Ann, are you coming to bed, Farrell? Farrell, not yet. I've got to study some curves. Ann, well, study these curves. 2003, Ann developed a skin rash. She took a bath and then wanted to rub some Vaseline on her back. She came downstairs in her garments for me to apply it. I applied the Vaseline. Then she turned around and said to me, "Don't look at me, Farrell. I'm not yet quite gorgeous." Alan. Alan was the first baby to be born without anesthetic. The doctor very much encouraged me to do this, and this is from Ann's writing. After we were in the delivery room, he asked me if I wanted to see the birth through a special mirror. But I was in so much pain, all I wanted to do was get that baby here. But the doctor persisted, almost forcing me to look, just to look. it was a life-changing experience. When I saw that little head coming out, I almost forgot the pain. When he finally was born, I felt that I had been a partner with the Lord in performing a miracle. It was such a wonderful experience that I had all the rest of my babies without anesthetic. Two little girls, sisters. Anne met two little girls who were from a very poor family. Their dresses were shabby. She offered them piano lessons for free. They were thrilled and came to our house for several weeks to practice and to take lessons from Anne. On one occasion, Anne wanted to do something especially nice for those little girls. So she invited them to dinner the next night. Anne cooked an excellent dinner and served it to them on our best china with cloth napkins in napkin rings. I and the rest of my family were not invited. We ate in the kitchen. It was just Anne and those two little girls eating on our beautiful dining room table an elegant meal. Anne and Verda. Verda Hicken was a disabled lady living in a small apartment in Logan. Her brother told me that she had been dropped on her head as a baby, causing her to have vocal spasms, and she would go every several seconds. It was quite unpleasant. She couldn't hold a job and lived on welfare checks. But she had a violin and practiced it, though not playing very well. Anne and Verda. Anne met Verda and offered to come to her place and accompany her on the piano. Of course, this was mainly to be a friend to Verda, giving her something to look forward to every week. Anne met with Verda every Thursday until Verda died. The bread business. Lynn remembers this. We needed money to keep, where's David?
Right here. Right here.
Oh, yeah. Oh. We needed money to keep David in school in New York. So Anne went into the bread business. She ground the wheat, baked the bread in her home oven. Our kids delivered it to the customers. Anne baked and sold 7,000 loaves of bread baked in her home oven. Poetry. Anne loved poetry. It's kind of the music of words, isn't it? She compiled and had printed as her red book. I should have that. I've got it in here. A collection of several hundred poems. She could recite many from memory. A short one from her red book is Little Elegy by Eleanor Wiley. An elegy is honoring someone who's dead. Withouten you, no rose can grow, no leaf be green, if never seen your sweetest face. No bird have grace or power to sing, or anything be kind and fair, if you're not there. Saving Marianne. And Marianne can't correct me on this because she was 1 year old. When Marianne was 1 year old, I was bishop and was going to hold a fireside. Anne attended my sacrament meeting and then took the children home, intending to drive back to the fireside. Boyd, where's Boyd? He was 11. He and Lynn were to babysit. Anne arranged for the children's supper. Then, quoting Anne now, suddenly, for no apparent reason, I had the very strong feeling that I shouldn't go. But I dismissed it, Anne said. Then it came back again, a second time. But I had the feeling again, don't go to the fireside. I tried to think of some reason why, but I couldn't. I got into the car, drove out of the driveway, but the feeling was so strong that I couldn't go any farther. I drove back in, got out of the car, and walked into the house. Boyd's back was to 1 year old Marianne, who was standing in the kitchen. I took one look at her, and a cold fear struck me. She was blue in the face, unable to make a single sound or take a breath. I was pretty sure she was choking, so I hit her on the back, but nothing dislodged. So Boyd held her upside down by the feet while I pounded her on the back. She coughed up a big lump of bread that had lodged in her windpipe. Later, we asked a doctor how long Marianne could live without breathing. He said, in 5 minutes, she would have brain damage. In 10 minutes, she would be dead. House guests. I hope you're listening. Because Anne was so accommodating to everyone she met, we had a number of individuals who came and lived with us for extended periods. 1, Huy from Vietnam, 3 years. 2, Tam from Thailand, 1 year. 3, Leslie from California, 5 months. 4, Valentina, a native Indian girl from the reservation, 1 month. 5, Lori from Cache Valley, several months. 6, Kim from Germany, 1 year. 7, Yoshimi from Japan, 1 year. 8, Paul, 1 month. Anne and Yoshimi kept in touch for 40 years until Anne passed away. We often talk with Huy on the phone. He and his wife visited us last summer, telling of their experiences of escaping the communists in Vietnam. Kim came to visit last summer, and Leslie later visited us as Lester. The mountains. In the summer of 1967, this is now quoting Anne, Farrell and I left the kids with Joan and went for a hike in the Wind Rivers. It was a wonderful time. We hiked down to Gorge Lake. It was beautiful and inviting, and I was hot. But I didn't have my swimming suit. So, because there was no one around but Farrell, I just stripped down and went swimming. That experience is practically unbelievable to me now, she wrote, quite a bit later, that I went swimming in the nude. Farrell and I then climbed Mount Fremont, 13,743 feet high. This is still quoting Anne. That was a very, very hard, very steep, and over lots of rocks. When we got to the top, we saw an eagle soaring beneath us. It was such a thrill. It rained on the way down, and with all that hard hiking and high altitude, I became very sick. So we set up camp near the bottom of the mountain. I guess you could call it a tent. It was a piece of plastic over a rope strung between two trees. I felt better. As soon I felt better, we were comfortable. We slept in two surplus army bags that had duck feathers poking out. But we were young and hearty and happy to be together. And then Anne continues. I remember sitting around the campfire late at night. Boy, when I remember that night, with the stars shining brightly above us and reflected from the lake, we sang, If You Were the Only Boy in the World and I Was the Only Girl. We did indeed feel that we were the only two people in the whole world. 2005. Anne and I were waiting for lunch to be served at M's in Salt Lake City. Anne, what do you think? Farrell. About what? Anne. About me. Farrell. You're simply terrific. Long pause. Anne. And? Oh boy, what a sense of humor. 2011. Farrell to Anne. You utterly despise being put on display. Anne's reply. I do, and you rather enjoy it. Let's see which of my kids remember this. The water fight. On one occasion, Anne and I were having a minor dispute over some small matter. I had gotten a glass of water and was holding it, the glass full. I gave her my opinion. She disagreed with me and said so. So I said playfully, if you don't take that back, I will pour this water over your head. Anne replied, you wouldn't dare. So what do you do? I poured the water over her head. That began our very best water fight. Each child in the family was involved. Everyone had glasses of water and were chasing each other all through the house. When the fight was over, the furniture and carpets on all 3 floors of this house were sopping wet. Everyone was drenched and laughing with delight. Anne loved it. Israel. Now this is quoting Anne. The place that was most life-changing was the tomb where Jesus' body was prepared and buried. It was in a beautiful garden, quite untouched from the day Jesus was there. We felt a wonderful spirit the moment we walked into the garden. The feeling grew and grew as we walked into the tomb itself. When we hated to leave, we had a feeling of closeness to Christ, his life and his death. I was closer, she says, to Christ than I ever was before. I sing the songs and take the sacrament with much more feeling than I ever did before. The knowledge that I actually walked where Jesus walked and partook of his spirit there has brought a reverence and closeness to him. A couple of funeral memories and some later. Julie Lefkin wrote, Sister Edwards understood that the most important core value in life was people and our relationships with those people. Sister Edwards had an innate gift of showing all who were in her presence that they were worthy and loved. Jeremy Jensen wrote, I don't think a conversation with the Savior would be very different than having one with Anne Edwards. I wrote this. It's titled Magic. She is quiet, never drawing attention to herself, though modest. Her greetings are full of joy, making you feel important and loved. You are drawn to Anne. When a child tells her a story, she says, tell it to me again. And when she sees a kite rising softly on the breeze, she jumps up and down and claps her hands. What is it about Anne that makes you cry at her passing? In appearance, she is ordinary. No one would point her out in a crowd or ask her opinion on some great issue. But you are happy when she is with you. She laughs with you and she cries with you. To describe her essence, you generate platitudes, but none fathom her essence. Yet it is there. And whatever it is, you mourn when she leaves. I would like to articulate an answer. I never will. It is a quiet mystery. It is in her. It is magic. Ailments and pain. Sometimes when I would try to tell people about the pain that Anne is having, and I would say, she's got this ailment and this, she would say, Farrell, stop. But I don't have to stop. 1, polio. 2, post-polio. 3, 2 knee replacements. 4, carpal tunnel surgery on both hands. 5, shoulder replacement. 6, lower back surgery, fusing 4 vertebrae. 7, high blood pressure. 8, high-altitude pulmonary edema. 9, heart fibrillation requiring a pacemaker. 10, high cholesterol. 11, sleep apnea. 12, hearing loss in one ear. 13, osteoarthritis. And 14, epilepsy. Late one night, Anne's blood pressure reached 210 over 140. Concerned doctors in the emergency room had her flown in a helicopter to Ogden, where expert heart doctors could treat her. On another occasion, while in the hospital, doctors had given her a powerful new medicine to make her upper chamber beat without fibrillating. I was there and watched the heart monitor when her heart stopped beating. After 30 or 40 seconds, it started again. The doctors didn't give her any more of that medicine. If I could relieve your pain, we would put on our packs and climb the mountain, sleep under the stars, sing softly together as the sun reflected in the lake dips below the ridge. If I could relieve your pain, we would, holding hands, run across the field, laughing. If I could call back the years, you would cradle another tiny baby in your arms. Sitting in her green chair, every day she wrote over 25 email messages to children, grandchildren, others. She would read 2 or 3 conference talks every day, and a chapter or 2 in the Book of Mormon. And every week she would read a book. And she herself wrote or compiled 4 books, 3 of which have been printed and bound. Anne writes this: they aren't children anymore. After most of the children had left our lives underwent a big change from furious activity to a lot of quiet. It seemed that all of a sudden there wasn't much to do anymore or to be involved in. And then tiny excerpts from our children's funeral talk. Boyd, quoting Mabel Gabbett in her poem, "If I were Eve, and the serpent came, wise and knowing and calling my name, and offered me pain and worry and death, and love of child to life's last breath, I think I would take the apple and eat, and count the price of mortality sweet." And then Boyd continued, "Love of child to life's last breath, that's my mother." Lynn, quoting Marianne, "We're not completely happy as long as there are miles and years between us, and you are there and I am here." David, some told you that in the River Heights home there is a magic door. No, there is no magic door down there. The magic is sitting in that green chair, smiling up at every face that enters the room, listening as they pour out their troubles, crying and talking with them until they walk away with hope once again in their hearts. Ellen, she wanted to hear everything, the good, the bad, the triumphs, the failures, how I was doing and what I was feeling. And she felt it all with me. In short, she did what Christ did. There are very few things I know with absolute certainty, but one is this: my mother loved me unconditionally and with all her heart. It is my singular privilege to have been her son. Jane, 4,000 email messages. One sent from Mom to Jane every day, and she saved them all. The last message, a few days before she died, said, quote, "Do you feel any older, Jane? Hopefully you feel just like you look. Absolutely beautiful. Marianne, she pushed her body every day of her life. She had an incredible capacity for love. She pulled people into her circle and nurtured them. She lived her life the way she wanted, and she relished every last minute of it. Until she too was done. Her body was simply spent. Catherine, Mom had plenty of sorrows in her life, yet she was a happy person. You would almost never see her without a smile on her face. She had a way of holding sorrow at bay and focusing on the positive. Although she never shied away from acknowledging her pain, she remained hopeful and happy to the end. I am going to deeply miss her beautiful, radiant presence. But her spirit will live on in my soul. Singing her sweet song to me when I'm sad or hurting or missing her. Farrell, Mom was the beating heart of the family. I think of her sitting with me as a little boy as she read to me, or singing to me as I lay in bed. And now I wonder how my time with my mother could possibly be over. She has slipped my soapy hold. Mom, you were magnificent. Laura. To Mom, love seemed natural. It was like she loved instinctively. Add to that love an incredible amount of creative energy, and you have Anne Parrish Edwards. Mom was never lodged in our brains. She always made her way to us through our hearts. John. It took a lot of courage for Mom to knock on the door of Margaret Southard. During the visit, Mom realized that what Margaret needed was a friend, so Mom became that friend. Mom knew the healer's art. She mourned with those that mourn. But more than this, she rejoiced with those that felt joy. Happiness, I think, is seeing the twinkle in her eyes as she laughed and clapped her hands upon hearing that John received the grant. Thank you, Mom, for your pure heart. Looking back, looking forward. My desire now, my dream now, is to live eternally with my family. It is my ultimate desire in life. Now we are old, looking more to the end of life than to the beginning. Farrell and I don't want to get to the other side and find out that we haven't measured up in some way, and we will be separated from each other and our family. We've decided that we need to make some improvements in our lives in order to be worthy of having that dream come true. And something wonderful has happened on this journey. Our testimonies of the influence and power of Jesus Christ have grown by leaps and bounds. We have felt His Spirit in so many ways, and also in concentrating so hard to make ourselves worthy to live together in the eternities. we have learned to love and accept and appreciate each other. While we are still here on earth. Each night after we went to bed, we would clasp hands, squeeze 3 times, thinking quietly, I love you. Then we would kiss. Finally, I love you. When you smile, when you make clever, sarcastic remarks, when you giggle, when you tilt back your head and laugh, when you bear your testimony, when you make smart-alecky remarks, when you're captivated by a good book, when you can't stand a poorly written book, when you laugh at my silly jokes, when I laugh at your silly jokes, when we go out on a date and then watch a movie at home, when we play rummy, when you are obsessed by a project, when I'm exasperated because of your obsessions, when we are alone at the cabin, when I think of a little 5-year-old girl with polio, when we are together on top of Mount Fremont, when we are sleeping under a visqueen tarp in the pouring rain, when you're holding your newborn baby for the first time, when I look at a church bench and remember you sitting there with 10 children, when you are in pain, when we are cuddled up in bed, when moonlight is shining through our bedroom window and we are singing, when you play Chopin's Etude, when you cry, when you are consoling a child, a grandchild, a friend, me, when you are loving a child, a grandchild, a friend, me. And now, as we continue our mortal journey, may we think with joy that there at the end of the trail is Mom, bustling about, waiting for us to make our appearance. I gave her this perfume bottle Christmas before we were married.